Okay, for those in the recording, this is the webinar for the intro Rapise demo. We'll be going through testing a simple application using Rapise and also integrating it with SpiraTest for test management. What we have, just to set the stage, is we have SpiraTest up and running here with a demo project, and that's where we'll be storing all of our test cases. And on the machine, got running to go with sample web application. We're going to be using the library information system. This is a sample web application that we host. You can access it at any time for doing demonstrations or any other activities at libraryinformationsystem.org. And this sample does have links to other unique samples for things like Java and HTML5 and jQuery. And if there's any other technologies that we find customers are needing, we can link them off here as well. So that way it's a central place for any resources, any samples and things that you want to be able to test with. Started up Rapise right here. And since we are going to be using it with SpiraTest, the first thing we're doing is make it connected. So you'll go to Options, Tools, Spira Settings, and your URL to SpiraTest or Spira Team, either is fine. A password, and then you want a location to store the tests. So that's going to be a local folder on this machine where Rapise is going to check out the files from SpiraTest locally for use, and then when you save them, it saves them from that working folder back up into SpiraTest. Connection is still valid. Okay. And what we'll do is we're going to go to File, New, choose our project in SpiraTest, folder, one test folder, choose how to create the test case. That's right. So we'll call it webinar test. That test case actually in SpiraTest, and that's where we'll be storing our test case and the resources. Now, you can, of course, still save things locally. Instead, you click on the Create Local button. The reason you might want to do that is if you are just trying out Rapise and you just want to create some tests that you're going to just throw away, just to test things out, you might want to create them locally in your machine. But any test that you actually will be using for real to do real testing would typically want to be version controlled. Saving it directly in Spira Team or SpiraTest, you have advantage of both version control and also the fact that you can schedule and launch that same test on different machines using the launching capability. What you do is choose the methodology. This is the type of test that you have. 3 types currently. There is the basic manual scripting mode. That actually is used for desktop applications or any application that is not one of the other 2 types, which would be a mobile. Mobile is for testing native apps or web Android apps on an iPhone or Android device. And the web cross-browser testing is for testing any kind of web application using the native browser support or Selenium. And that makes sure that the web libraries are loaded. And so web application, to start with at least, I'm going to choose that. Hit Create from Spira. That creates the test. And then I choose the browser profile. By default, there are several browser profiles loaded. You can create your own ones. You can hear we've actually created some extra ones for different types of Chrome, different options set. One is for cross-origin, one is for cross-frame. So, and you can also do the same thing. For example, if you have different versions of IE or Firefox installed, Fox can be installed in different folders with different version numbers using the standalone installer, and you might want to do that to test different versions. You can have different versions stored here with a different startup parameter. Just use the basic Firefox. Like that, that's going to create my test. What that will do is it will create the test here in Rapise, and then when we go to save it, it will let us save it back into SpiraTest. Actually, what you'll have is this test function, and everything in Rapise is written in JavaScript. That's the underlying language that we use, and Rapise provides its own extensions for doing testing, but a full JavaScript implementation So if there are standard JavaScript functions you want to use from other libraries or other sources, you can include them in your test. The other see, if we go back to the start page, is the control a user file. That's where we store any user custom functions. And we'll see that works a little bit later on. And then the start page is also an important place that you can go to whenever you want to play a test, change the browser that you're going to play or record from, or useful documentation links, shortcuts, and importantly, lots and lots of samples. And you can also download new samples as we publish them from our online repository by clicking Fetch Samples. So if there are things that you want to try out, for example, when I use an example later on, maybe I use a spreadsheet, or if you want to look at OCR, or some examples we have, for example, using jQuery UI and HTML5 controls, all of those things are available in the samples list. And we're all samples all the time based on feedback from our partners and customers. We have everything ready. What we're going to do is record the test. So I click on Record and Learn. And recording window in the bottom right. What I'll do is as I start to use the application, it will record my interactions with it and will the test for me. Are there any questions so far? We're up and running with the recorder. I'm going to do a simple set of operations first of all. I'm here, so you can see what I'm doing. Librarian. Click login. And what I'll do is I'm going to go to book management. Before I do that, let me verify I logged in. So I'm going to this verify option you see down here in the top left control. That option lets me verify a value on the screen or any attribute of it. So let's verify this login that I logged in as the correct user. So this way of doing it is to hover the mouse over and do Control and 1, like that. And that's going to bring up the verify box. And things like the bitmap, the width, the height, any of those different attributes. Or in this case, what I really want is just the text. And this adds a verification point into my test. And you can see the recording right here. So now we create a book. So the book list. Create a book. I enter the name of the book. Let's call it Lord of the Rings. And we'll do it's fantasy. We don't really have that. We'll do historical fiction, which is sort of not right, but that's okay. Hit it. And into the application. Tap to complete. Go. And so we now verify that if we want. I'll do Control and 1 here. And wait verification box, and then we can verify our value. Loading. There you go. And the last thing I want to do is log out. And that's an important step, because if you don't do that, when you play the test the second time, you'll still be logged in. And because it shares a login and log out button, it will just log you out instead of logging you in at the beginning. It's important to return to the starting point. So we're going to finish now. And what it does is it first of all adds lines of code for each operations we did. And what we'll do is it will then add comments before each one as well. So it's on login, click on username, click on librarian, enter password, click on the button. So you can see exactly what it did both in the comments and actually in the code. Now what you'll notice is that every single operation follows the same pattern. There's SES command with the name of the object, followed by some verb or operation, and then in cases, there's actually some parameters as well. So this SES command, that says, find the object with name, in this case, username, and do action on it, in this case, set the text of it, and then after that comes a variable set of parameters that will depend on the operation you're doing. Now, you may wonder where these objects come from. Well, they're in the object tree, which is over here on the Explorer window on the left. You've got Files View, which it will be defaulted to, and then you've got the object tree. Every time you interact with an object inside a web application or a desktop app or a mobile app or even a web service, it appears here as an object to be interacted with. And same, that's actually referring to this username object right here. Name is actually a pointer to something, because obviously web applications are more complicated than that. They have nested controls. So what Rapise is doing is it's saying this is a logical an object pointer called username, and it points to something physically in a web page. And you'll see down here that this XPath window right here, that is actually how it physically finds the object. In this case, because that login button has a unique HTML ID, it's able to log onto it based on the ID and name. If there's no ID, it would look for potentially a position, like the fourth in the second row in the table, things like that. So it uses what information is available and then builds a unique way of finding it. Same thing for desktop applications and for mobile. So there is the same consistency throughout. A bit more about this when we get into the spy tools, but now it's important to recognize these are logical pointers to things on an application. And each of these has functions. So if you look at username, you can only use what it's given you, which is the code it wrote. You can also expand one of these and say, I want to click on this book link, for example, book management in the navigation bar. Well, I can expand it, and I can always just go down here. I'll make a few lines, and I can go in here and say, do click. I can purely encode by just typing. There is code completion. I could do it this way as well. So that's how you hit the right key. There you go, like that. So when you record things, what it's doing is it's interpreting your interactions, the objects, and then adding the code for you. Okay, so let's just try playing it back first of all to make sure it works. So I'll play. And it's going to great. So that, and everything passed, I believe. Perfect. Now, a couple of things you might want to do if this was a real test is the first thing is if a lot of test script in one giant laundry list, what you typically want to do is decide to break this down into smaller units. And so the thing we might want to do is take the login and log out and make those functions, because obviously we're using that, and we use that in other places, or we might want to log in, log out as different users, for example. And anytime you've got code that's going to be repeated, it's worth making a scenario out of it, which is basically a JavaScript function. And what we'll do is we can extract that code. So the login, this is the entry of the login and password. It's clicking on the button as a verifying the login matched. And we're going to right click. We're going to do a user scenario. We'll login. I'll use capital. And we'll do the same thing for the logout. Now, logout's much simpler if you was clicking on one button, but we'll just do that anyway for consistency. And we'll do extract user scenario. And then we have two functions logging it. And typically what we want to do here is make this more generic. So we'll take the login and password out of the code and put it in as a parameter. And since it's just JavaScript, we can create two parameters called username, password, like this. The other thing we need to do, which I always forget to do, is we need to make sure we're verifying the right names, because otherwise it won't match. So we'll get our username, and we're going to put that control, and we could even change the label in the message. that's pretty much it. Oh, except we need to just pass the values through. Like that. So that's pretty good. It's a very simple example. Now, the thing I will mention is that these log in and log out parameters, they are also available in the object tree. There is full IntelliSense for those. If you go into the object tree and under user functions, that you'll see functions now. They also can be dragged and dropped too, so you can do the same thing like that. And it recognizes those two parameters you've got to pass for login. So as you build your code library, it's going to add in that into the user functions list. Also, you can have global variables, and those would appear in the user variable list. Have that option as well. Some global functions, depending on the type of testing you're doing, there are different functions here. There are things for interacting with Selenium. There's the function we use for verification called tester. There's also functions for interacting with a spreadsheet, character recognition. If you have a phone and you want to be able to do certain actions, like shaking the phone, we can make those as well. So there are some global objects that you'll start with. So in this case, it's got a login section, a main B, and a log out. So make sure we haven't broken it. I'm going to run it one more time. And then we're going to browse it. So we're back one more time in Firefox. Okay, so we've done that. What we'll need to do next is plug it back in a different browser. To do that, you go to the start page, you choose the browser, and I try Chrome, and then I hit play. And you gotta hit play, same thing. Let's make sure, there we go. Chrome itself, and since Chrome isn't really running, make time on this machine. So it looks like I may need to wait for Chrome to start. So if someone's getting the machine up and running and Chrome takes a while to launch, you may have it a second time. So let's just let it, and then we'll Chrome up. Unfortunately, the browser takes too long to start. Right, that one time. I'm going to stop. I'll let it fail, and then I'll just try it again. Yeah, machine, and it's a little slow this morning on this virtual machine for some reason. And so when that happens, sometimes the browser takes too long to start. And we just need to make sure the browser's running and then do it again. So let me, I'm going to stop this. Wait. Meanwhile, Chrome is now ready. Question while I'm waiting. Okay, let's do it. Yeah, I'm unable to connect to Chrome, which makes sense. I should mention, actually, that's a good point, is that to do testing in the browser, you need to make sure you do have the plugin active. And so go to the Tools, Add-ons. There is for Firefox. There's also Chrome as well. Need to be available. I one though. So let's try it again. On play. Okay. With Internet Explorer, and also if you use our Selenium libraries, you can also play it back through on a Mac using Safari and Edge as well. So that's an example of a browser test. next. One would be to actually data drive this. We want to try the same login scenario with different users, and we can try that. The other thing we would often want to do is use the spy tools. Now, the spy tools and are other ways you can actually build the test. Now, we built this simple test by basically recording some through the application and built the script for us. And when you've got a simple set of tests to do, for example, with the application, you'll know that it was fairly straightforward, a simple form to enter and some simple value. When you have a more complex set of grids, for example, of data, you might want to use tools to actually understand specifically which row you're looking at, which item. And so that's where the spy tools come in. The other thing we can do is we can learn things. Now, learning is an alternative to recording. And the reason you might want to do that is if you've got lots of things you want to build in the object tree, you don't have to keep going backwards and forwards in the application to learn them. So what you can do is you can do record and learn. So I'll put it back to Firefox. I'll do record and learn. Instead of clicking on these navigation bars, which will change the page, I'm going to do Control and 2, which is next to the verify we previously used on the keyboard. I'm going to basically hover the mouse over and Control and 2. Control and 2. I'll do a few more. I'll do the image. Actually learning those objects, not actually recording any interactions. So the end it shows you is learn, doesn't say click or type text. And it's a way for us to build a test script and build X just by actually interacting by over anything we want. And then it gets. So I'll do one more. I'll do Rapise. Actually, I don't want that one. And then once learning, hit the finish button, and it will back into Rapise. And what will happen is it will no longer have added actual commands like click on this and what it will do is it will just add it to the object tree. So if I go into Rapise, you'll have the book management, Rapise image, the spiral image, then the home page right here. I also sell, but I don't really want that. So once you're doing that it's a lot quicker to do that than to click through the entire application. So if I want to learn everything on the page that I need to learn, like for example these links here, I can just use that learn function, move over all the objects, and then once I'm ready, I can go back in here and I can just compose my script by just dropping the appropriate operation. So if I wanted to click on the repeat image, I could just say, do click. So that's if you're happy using code. Some people like to use the record and play. It's a way to interactively build the application. Other people, they want to just learn all the objects, build their put of objects, and then just compose the script themselves. And the other thing we do have, as I mentioned, is the spy tool. So if I do here, do that last time. I'm using the wrong spy, so let me change that. There are different spies available, so that's one thing to be careful about. There are the accessible and UI automation and offer desktop and manage over desktop applications for different business. Mobile is for an Android or iOS application, and then web is obviously for web apps. So we'll do that. So okay. And you inspect the application. You can see the document that's behind the page. You can see right here. And move pages. You can basically, so if I want to log in, I'm going to log in and get to that data grid. So an example of the spy tool would be, if we go back to that list of books that we had, if I wanted to edit one of the books or verify the text, I use the verify button, and what it did, it verified the 15th row, but it did not work because maybe I'm going to sort my grid by different value, different field, or maybe another book gets added before this one because they're in alphabetical order, and now my test is going to break. So one of the most important things you're doing automated testing is to ensure that what you record is robust and isn't break every time you change the data in the application. So it's really handy. So in the spy tool, what you can do is use this get snapshot that refreshes the front page. And then use the track option, Control and T, to actually track what you're seeing. So I'll do Control and T, and I move over Amsterdam. Control and T again. I'll maximize this. You can also make the recording window transparent, so it doesn't get in the way. And you've got this web here. And you actively browse the web page and all of the attributes. And to do that's really important is you can see the different ways we can recognize that object. Now, for something like the, let's say the edit link, which we'll see, that has a unique attribute. So it's clear you Rapise when you learn this object by clicking on it. That's what Rapise actually learns. It learns a reference to an anchor tag with a unique href. That href is actually really stable because that's unique to that book. Doesn't matter the order it's in, doesn't matter the name of the book, doesn't matter the position it's in. That's going to be a really stable way of recognizing it. So if I want to click on that, I could learn that object, and it gets out of my recording window right here. Verify that that's a valid XPath by doing that. We'll show it in the results underneath here. So that's easy. Now, let's say we wanted to find the table cell, though. If I was to do this one here, TD, if I try and, well, now this, what that says is find me a table with a table body and get the fourth row in the second cell. And then test. It shows that's good, but it's not very reliable. I know that if I change my order or add a book before this one, my test is going to click on the wrong item. And that's not so good. So what I might want to do is try a different X option. And on this one here, you'll see there's different options, the different XPaths I can use. So I wanted to do it by which is an accessibility standard. This doesn't have an array of attributes, so it doesn't work. Use that. If it's got, I can use a CSS path. I can also look for just the index view. But in this case, what's going to be really helpful here is the text. And in this case, I want the book named Amsterdam. So I actually want this one. So I'll use this, put in my tester. I can now do test, and it found it. Now, good. Now, what I might want to do is I might want to find it by its ID. So I could do the same thing. Maybe on this one. And I could, and it's that cell. Let's find different values using different queries. And then I really want the Amsterdam book name, but I want to find it by its ID, so I can just do dot slash like that and test it. There you go. Now I'm basically saying, find me the book that has the first cell ID of 3, get this cell next to it. And that guarantees that when you run the test, you're always going to get the right book. You're not going to get the wrong book because you've added one above that in the list. So let me learn that. Hit finish. And user's done. It's basically gone back to this object tree, and it books here, Amsterdam, the edit link. That's when I just simply use the default XPath, add one where I do a little bit of querying to get something that I know was more reliable. So what about automated testing is the person writing the test who understands the test conditions may not necessarily know the application that well. They may not understand what's stable and what's not. So one of the best practices we have found is if you have someone who's an automation engineer or someone who's familiar with the application, the HTML, knows a bit about what's going to be stable and what's not, they can again use the SPY and the recording and learning, build this object library, and then they to the tester who's take these objects and then drag and drop them to build the test case. So where you have someone who's more of the application, creating the pointers to the things on the page that we know will be reliable and stable, and then the person writing the test can just drag these across here and use them, and they're going to work reliably. So you can do both. Other times you have testers that really you want to split the task up. And applications are sufficiently simple that you could just simply record and play through them, and it works first time, like the one we did in this example. I saved all this. built out. To save it back to Spira test for test management is easy as well. We can go back to save to Spira. And what it will connect to Spira test, and it will save dialog. Everything to Spira test for version control. And you can then use Spira test as test management to deploy tests on different machines and potentially schedule it to run at times of the day as well. So it's putting it into the Rapise demo project, it's putting it into the document storage, and that's the name of the folder it's going to create. In the document storage, we'll hit create. These are all the files. And by default, we'll have the right exclusion, so you shouldn't change this. By default, it's going to upload all the Java files, the object definitions, the test project, the user functions. It won't upload any of your reports, and it won't upload any of the log files or output files, and that's normal. So you should normally just take the default and hit OK. And there's to go back to Spira test. There you go, it's right here, not run. And what we'll do is going to basically act as the version control, as I mentioned. It's uploaded everything. And we can then do scheduling as well. Any for this to open up?
So I have one question. Why is the status not run for test case?
Excellent question. I run that test case from Rapise locally, so I'm writing the test case, and I ran it locally here. It wasn't part of an execution Spira test, and we hadn't even saved the Spira test yet. So typically, what we would do is you would write the test like I did locally, get it working, and make sure the test is ready, and then once you're ready to put it into production, you save it back to Spira test, and then it will show as run. And in fact, that's what I'll be doing right now. So it's a question.
Thank you.
Our test, no problem. So now our test case, it's ready to test, and you see here there's no steps because we're not doing manual testing, so we don't have any steps defined. Rapise does have a manual testing mode where it can actually take the steps you've written in Spira test and put an manual execution screen. You can also write the tests, manual tests into Rapise as well, but that'll be the subject of a different webinar. Today's focus is automated testing, but the good news is that functionality is available as well. So for right now, we're going to look here to see that we have test script. It's been linked to our test case. The engine is set correctly to Rapise. First one. If you want to see all the files in Spira test, you can do that. I'm just going to control-click on the link, and that puts me into the document section of Spira, and these are all the files right here. Switch to this one here. So this is my current test. These are the versions, and I can view the other test files. So for example, if I click on this U file, which is the user functions file, that's available, and that one's JavaScript, so I can preview it, and you actually your code right here. So that's all in Spira test. So you can view things in Spira test, and if I save a second version, you'll see the different versions appear here. So it's actually run this test from Spira test, and that's easy to do. We always go back. Oops, that's my VM client, wrong one. If I go here, I'm going to close Rapise. Browser open. The you want to use is the launching tool. It's a bit like remote launch, if you've seen that. It's a tool that basically connects to Spira test and waiting for test, and it will run remotely in the background. You don't need the Rapise application itself to be running. It just needs to be running, and that's designed to sit in the system tray here and runs in the background. Licensing, the launching tool doesn't need a license also, which is nice. If you have 2 or 3 customers writing tests, they will need licenses for each machine writing the test, but they won't need licenses for running the test. So you can have 3 people writing the test using Rapise, 10 machines launching it on different OS combinations. You don't need to have 13 licenses, just 3. we would do is, and I've done this ahead of time, is you set this up to point to Spire Team. It's the same connection as Rapise, so that's already done. The only thing extra you will want to do is give it the machine a machine name, and this machine is called VM Rapise. Is the name Rapise. So now I do back to Spire test. As I go back to my automated hosts, and I have one here called VM Rapise, and it points to that token Rapise. So that's already set up. All I do now is just set up a test set. And I use one of my existing test sets, or I can create a new one. I'm just going to use a new one so we can keep it separate from the demos. And we webinar set 1. Hit save. Go into that. Existing test, which I put in tests. Webinar test 1. You could have more than one test as well. So if you have 3 or 4 different ones to run, you can create a single set with them all. And I set the automation host to VM Rapise. And I'll say, and mine is set to run overdue tests. So let me do 8:30, which is slightly in the past. And all the dates in Spire Team are universal. So basically, when we save a date here, it's sent as universal time. So if the virtual machine and the web server and your machine are on different time zones, it's all handled like that. So I set that up for 8:30 a.m., which is our time here. Machine the same time zone, so it will be the same. It's set to run every 30 minutes. 30 seconds or so. I'll just hit force poll right now. Force poll just tells it, don't wait for the next cycle, just do it immediately. On a non-poll, just wait 30 seconds. Start up, and it's going to set run in Firefox. I had told it to run in Firefox. And let's see. I realized I think I have a problem. I left the browser logged in from before, so it's going to fail, which is actually a good test, because what's happened is when I hit the link, instead of logging in, it actually logged out, and it's trying to, book management, which doesn't exist. So we'll let it run and fail, and then once it's done, we'll get a fail back in Spire. So it's a good test. So let's go see if it's finished yet. Yeah, with a fail, the test runs, hit refresh, and there's our test. It failed. And you can see what happened. We're on screen, well, it can't do that. And go to the attachments, we turned on screenshot capture, so it capture the screenshot. So I could look in here and see, step 3. Oh, look at that. That's the problem. It wasn't logged in. Well, it was logged in and it couldn't log in. Okay. So just to prove work, we can go back. So I'm logged out, which I am, which is good. And then what I do is I just schedule a test. It's very simple. Go back to setup. Now marked as completed. Put it, hit save. That's all I have to do. Wait 2 or 3 minutes. And it's lazy. I'm not going to wait. I'm just going to go here. I'm going to do force poll again. And it's good. This will work. Now this time it's logging out. Okay. That's what happened. Yeah, great. And back to go to test runs and hit refresh. You'll see there's now a pass. And the test results would obviously filter back up to the case itself and to the test set and to the any requirements. So all the things you're doing in Spire test in terms of test management, requirements management, all that information is obviously part of this as well. So when you run the tests, you get to see them again they're linked to, the releases they're a part of, all of that's available. And for enterprise reporting of the tests, you use the same standard reporting you have in Spire tests for the automated tests. So you can see here, I can actually do a test run report of the automation host versus the status. You can see that VM Rapise has failed. You can also over time, so the date range to week, and update. You'll see you have the two results. One pass, one fail. To the data grid, you'll see there's the two results there. So you typically would use Spire test. The reporting within Rapise gives you more detail, but it's at a single test case run level. Very simple example of record tests, playing it back, saving in Spire test, and scheduling it. Any questions?
Yeah, Fred, here's Konstantin. I have one.
Yes.
If I want to run the tests with different browsers, it writes that then I need to copy the tests for each of browsers I want to use?
No, great question. No, the easiest way to do this, the answer depends a little bit. If you're using Spire test, there is one way of doing it, and if you're using Rapise on its own, then there's a slightly different way. If you're using just Rapise, you can set the browser value in Rapise and have a loop, one for each browser. We typically recommend Spire test being easier because it's designed to do that kind of thing. So what you would do to do Spire test is you basically go in here, and if I go back to my test, use the same test case. So I'm going to create a new test case. You can add it multiple times of different values. So to do
for each browser I want to use.
Yes, right.
Mm-hmm.
So what you do here is you go to the test case and you add the parameters right here. And I'll create one called G_browser.
Mm-hmm.
And default value will be Firefox HL. It's added. Now I've got that parameter. I go back into my test set. Actually, I already have here. I can go add to test case, and let me go in here, and I'll just grab my test a second time. Have that. Now I have it here twice. And what I'll do is I will go in here and show edit parameters. I'll do actually I'll do Chrome, because I know that Chrome's running. HTML. And this do edit parameters. And this will keep the Firefox. I'm blank because it's the default. And then I'm going to show columns, show parameters, which I think is a bit easier because then you can see.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Perfect.
And the way it works is anytime you get a variable parameter, when it runs it to Rapise, it becomes actually a global variable inside Rapise. It's set. Actually, the main one I want. If you go here, what's actually happening is we have this thing called the library, and then it uses this. All we're doing is we're passing a through to here to tell it overwrite a value and make it Firefox or IE.
Okay.
What it will do, so it will run the same test case on the different browsers, and some articles on this on our website too. So if you forget what I showed you, there are links on our website and KB articles. And in general, it's a great question. All the information, this video for obviously other people, but also if you ever need if you have any questions about a lot of these things in Rapise, go to our knowledge base. There's very interesting articles here. For example, if you go to Rapise web thing, you can Spire for browser. And here, like when recording on Chrome, testing different browser tabs at once, window frames, rich text boxes, things like that. So there's lots of different useful articles here on different types of testing. So our blog has some other information as well. Questions? Recording and playback and integration with Spire test?
Question.
Hi.
This is Johannes speaking. You talked about to make your test more robust by finding the objects, for example, a row object. I think you search for the title then?
Things I first of all search for the title, which obviously may not be viable if the name changes. The other example I did was this one here, where basically, I must make it a bit bigger so you can see. Hold on. For the ID 3, which is the ID of the book, and I search, and then I say find the parent row, then go down one level again.
Yeah, and I have a question now. So, how would you implement if you like to have a function where you can pass on the book title or the ID as a parameter?
Very good question. Yes,
that's the object.
Yes, that's a great question. I should have shown that. So let me do that now. Basically, what you want to do then is because with this situation, what you're doing is you're going to have to learn every single book, which can get tiresome because you don't learn every single book as an object.
Yeah.
What you really want to do is learn the table as an object and then dynamically query for the sub-objects using a function. And that's what we would do. So to do that, we bring the application back up to librarian. So we're back here again. So what I'll do is I'm going to go and do spy. I'm on web, so yep, spy. And once up, here we go. There's our title, and let me do track. I get the whole table. So to do that, sometimes it's a bit tricky because you've got to click on the border. So what I'll do is find a cell and just click on the table like that. That's the easiest way. And then that table is actually very easy to learn because it has an ID. We gave an ID called grid books. So let me learn the table because it's got a unique physical ID. So learn that. Hit finish. And then, now you've got that, what you'll do is, I'll just do it underneath here. Typically, you create a function to wrap it, but for right now, I'm just going to put it in the main script line. You go here, and there's a function. There's a couple of options. If it's a direct child, if you want just a direct child under it, you could use one of these child options. But for it, we've got lots of rows and cells. The way, in my opinion, is just to do this. You can use CSS or XPath, depending on your preference, but you just click the drag over. To get me the table, then I will find any book that has a set with the text equal, was it Amsterdam, I think, or actually 3, the book 3, like that. And I want then to get the parent of that, get the so that would get me a book with ID 3. And what I do is I want to make that a variable, so I just simply do that. Replace the text with just, and then this function. So I go back to my user file, find book by ID, book ID, and then actually I just need to do return. And the matches, so I would actually want the indexer to get the first one. And look, it says find book table, query to that, any cell that has text with a ID in it, go up one level to its row, and go back to its second cell. So that's typically what we would do. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. 10 minutes left. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I was wondering if you have the browser launched before you start the test. Is it possible to launch the browser?
Yes, it's actually launched the browser normally. This virtual machine I'm using this morning is having some performance issues that I was struggling with, and so the browser just taking a little bit longer to launch than they should normally. So on a normal machine, or when the VM server is not having issues, it will launch the browsers quickly and launch them. I just did that because I was having some issues this morning on this VM. Yeah, it normally will. For browser apps, it knows for each browser library, it knows the path to launch it. This is obviously about desktop applications, but if you're using desktop apps, it's a little bit different. You've got to tell it where the exe is. But for browser apps, we choose the different libraries. It does know which one to start. What it'll do, which is what you saw, is that if the browser is already running, it knows to attach to the running instance and not try and launch a second one. As it looks for a running instance of that process. If it finds it attaches to it, if it can't, it will launch it. Which is a bit slower. So, and the other problem we found with launching sometimes is if you've got Firefox and you've got an update that hasn't yet installed, sometimes it will try and update Firefox or Chrome, and it will actually prevent it launching because it will take too long to do the update. So generally doing testing, browsers are up to date. You don't have the auto updates turned on, just because you want to avoid the browser not starting because it's doing an update, and then Rapise thinks it's timing out and stops.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Here.
Hi.
Yes, hi. I have two different questions. The first one is when you said you need the add-ons or plugins for the different browsers you want to test.
Yes.
Or want to test in. Are plugins installed automatically when I install Rapise on my local machine, or do I have to install them separately?
You have to install them separately. When Rapise starts and tries to play back, if it can't find the plugin, it will pop up a box and say, if it says it's Firefox not installed, and it will redirect you to the Firefox store. All the plugins are in their respective stores. We do that because if you try to install them, the browser has to be in developer mode, which not everyone wants to have to do. So we put them into the stores as free plugins. So you can actually search directly in the Chrome store and the Firefox store for the plugins, either plugin, and you see the plugins there. So it's out of searching in the store, or if you try and do it and it's not installed, we redirect the browser to the store, URL for the store item.
Okay. And my second question is, I tried Rapise a little bit by myself, and I had the problem that the application I wanted to test has session-based or user-based object identification. So when I learn the object, there's a session string or an user string for the identification. Do you have any tips? How?
Yes, and this may be worth a follow-up call we could do because we have a few minutes left. But basically, there are ways to exclude things from the URL, and there's ways to exclude things. You can exclude certain attributes. So we probably want to look at it in more detail. Maybe it's worth having a WebEx with one of our engineers, and we can definitely set that up. So email me after this call, and we'll have someone set up an actual call with you to help you through it in detail. But conceptually, for everyone on the phone, there are things here which you would typically want to look at, like the web spy. You could actually exclude attributes and include attributes. There are attributes like session IDs that are part of certain IDs. There may be ways to just exclude them. If it's part of the ID and it's not like a separate attribute, then one thing you might want to do is instead of learning it using the standard XPath, you might want to learn using a different option like here, which is the accessibility attributes, if those are in the application. That can be more aligned if the IDs are going to be non-stable, or you can index, which means it find the fifth element. So there's some different options in the XPath how it learns that you can turn on or off depending on the application you're using. Probably with having someone of our guys look at the actual application with you, and they'll certainly have some recommendations as well. And definitely do that. Email me after this, and we'll happily to this account. We'll set up a WebEx with one of our engineers who can walk it through with you. Oh, well, thanks so much.
Sorry. So maybe you've just said you've already said it. Where could we, or will this WebEx be online sometime?
Oh, very good. Yes, it will be on our website. It will be on our YouTube channel, and then our YouTube channel is also linked to our videos page. You go to ideas and videos. All our videos go here, and in fact, the previous webinars we have here. We're actually going to be doing more of these webinars on both Spira Team, Chronodesk, and Rapise. And we have Rap 5.0 coming out in a month or so. So there'll be more webinars, more intensive webinars there. And Spira Team 5.1's coming out. So we anticipate more webinars on that. So there's going to be a whole bunch of webinars in the new year. Plus, we're actually going to be doing some more short form videos, more for customers than necessarily partners, but anyone can read them, which will be designed to be 2-minute long, 10-minute long, getting started videos, and then more in-depth ones. You're going to see a lot more video output from us in the next 3 to 4 months. That's an area where we're working on to improve. We're at time now, so thanks again everyone who attended today's webinar. If you have ideas for future webinars, if you'd like to look at desktop applications, we can do service testing, SOAP or REST web services or desktops, anything like that, just send us an email to sales@inflectra.com and we can make it a subject of a future webinar. And when this recording is available, we will share it on our website and blog and Twitter and Facebook posts as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.